Hello, welcome. Welcome, everyone. Just going to give it a few minutes for everyone to get logged in, and then we will get started. As you're getting logged in, if you want to say hi in the chat and drop where you are tuning in from, we always love to see that. Drop your city. Let us know where in the world you are this evening. Just going to give it another minute or two. Oh, hello, Chester, New Jersey. Hi, Emily. Hello from North Seattle. Hi, Evelyn. I'm in North Seattle too. Monique's joining us from Tahoe. Yay. All right. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are so excited to be here for a conversation about 6 spices, 60 dishes from Ruta Kahate, and here speaking with Monique Llamas of Hardcover Cook. I'll introduce myself. I'm Zoe Friesen. I'm the events manager here at Booklarder, a community cookbook store located in Seattle, Washington. We do 100% cookbooks and food writing. So it is the most delicious bookstore, as I like to say. Let's see. We've been doing more in-person events in the last year, but we are delighted to continue our virtual events program as well. It's such a delight to be able to connect with authors and interviewers from all over, and of course, attendees from all over as well. So thank you so much for spending your evening with us. We're very excited to have you. Just a few little notes before I get started. Let's see, the talk will be recorded and it will be posted up on our YouTube channel within about 48 hours. So if you're here with us live and you RSVP'd, you will be getting a link to rewatch in your email. So keep an eye out for that. If you end up missing the end, you have to run, or you just want to share with a friend, you can go ahead and do that once that is posted. I've turned the live transcript on, so if that's helpful to you, if you want to turn that on, or if it's not helpful to you and you want to turn it off, either way, you can find that down at the bottom of your screen. You can control that, whether that shows up for you or not. Let's see. Ruta and Monique will chat, and they will also be taking questions, so make sure you put all of your questions into the Q&A box in the bottom of your screen there. You can use the chat to chat with each other, chat with me, and I can answer some of your basic questions, but any questions for Ruta and Monique, go ahead and put those in the Q&A box. Let's see, what else? You can support the talk by purchasing a copy of 6 Spices, 60 Dishes from Booklarder. And thank you so much to everyone that has done that already. And I will make sure and drop a link in the chat for you to do that as well. And now, without further ado, I will go ahead and turn it over to Ruta and Monique. Thank you so much.
Thanks for that warm welcome, Zoe. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Monique Llamas. I'm an obsessed cookbook collector, longtime industry professional, and tonight I'm thrilled to be joining you all today from chilly South Lake Tahoe to chat with Ruta Kahate, author of 6 Spices, 60 Dishes. We're going to have a great talk today. In addition to writing cookbooks, Ruta's a chef and restaurateur, currently running Ruta's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Ruta, so nice to be here with you tonight.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here.
Excellent. Well, let's dive right in. So right from the very beginning of the book, you kind of share your background, talking about how you grew up all over India and that wanderlust has continued into adulthood. So I thought, why don't you kick us off by sharing a little bit about your bio and background, both where you've been and also a little bit about your professional life as a culinarian and cookbook author.
Sure. So like I said to you before, as I grow older, my story gets longer. So in India, my father was the general manager of the mint and where the currency of the country is made. So we were transferred several times within the country. And this made us literally, the entire family was like this little, Swiss family Robinson. We just like pick up, reestablish ourselves in new places. And culinarily, what this meant was, and thankfully my family was very, very open, very adventurous, and we would embrace the cuisine of the state we were in and incorporate it into our, just regular meals. I think my parents are to thank for this, because they were so incredibly curious. So we had, if we ever hired a cook, they would be from the local community. They would teach us how to cook all these things. My mother was, she learned to cook very late in life, but then she was going to do it right, and had incredible sort of insights into keeping food very, very healthful while incorporating new techniques. So it all started there, honestly. And my folks also felt it was necessary for us to be self-sufficient, and food and eating being the basis of all life. They taught us how to cook at a very young age. So both my brother and I, very unlike other, like typical Indian families, we learned to cook when we were 11 years old. And yeah, that's how that curiosity and ability began. And then it just took, as I grew older, started to, every time I went to a different country, that's how I approached life in a new place. So whether I went to live in Hong Kong, even though like the food was extremely different, and I was a vegetarian, but I literally landed in Kowloon, which is a Chiu Chow. Like, it's all very different kind of Chinese food, but I was, intrigued by the smells and the food and the ingredients available, even though at the time I did not eat any of them. So yeah, I guess inborn sort of, curiosity for food.
I mean, what a gift for your parents to give you, and for all of us to have curiosity. And I think it kind of drives all of us cookbook lovers and collectors. Like, just there's an amazing world out there of food and culture to explore. So what an absolute gift.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. Very lucky, very fortunate.
Well, so along the way, you've written a few cookbooks. I believe the first one was 5 Spices, 50 Dishes.
Correct.
So you now have 6 Spices, 60 Dishes, and then there was one in between there. So I know throughout life, various things influence us. But your last book was, the 5 Spices, was out 15 years ago or so. So I believe in that time frame, quite a bit has happened to you based on like your own life, personal changes, some trends around the US. Can you tell us a little bit about what has changed since writing that first book? What influenced the
sure thing.
Second one?
So the first book was written when we lived in Oakland, California. And at the time, this was, 15 to 16 years ago. And I was teaching. We had remodeled our kitchen to be a semi-professional teaching kitchen. I was teaching cooking. I was taking culinary tours to India. I used to consult, food consult, and then Chronicle Books asked me to write a book. And at the time, as I was teaching, I realized, and I wanted to make it simple for, people would come to my kitchen, and yes, we could talk about, multiple spices, and we could cook together, and they could see how this was done. But if you're going to write a book, then, I realized that there is that hurdle. Like, no one's, I'm not standing by their side. And also I realized that really my cooking and the way I cook at home doesn't always incorporate like multiple steps or multiple spices. So that was my motivation initially, to bring simplicity, so the first book, in fact, I used to say it's like simple but not simplistic. So my chef friends adopted the book. Newbies who had never cooked before or never cooked Indian before could use the book. So that time, 16 years ago, I had 25 recipe testers all over the world and the US. And I would present them with recipes, excuse me. And it was a rigorous process where they had to kind of it had to hit all these, like, it was easy to, easily available, recipe was easy to understand. The ingredients were, very easily available. So that was a rigorous process. And, that book did really well. I mean, it literally went out of print last year, I think, which is why Chronicle asked me to write the next round. My second book was by Andrews McNeil, and that was called Quick Fix Indian. And that the parameters there were that any dish had to be made in 30 minutes or under. So from start to finish. And actually that book, had 125 recipes with a lot of tricks. Unfortunately, that didn't go through, that didn't do so well, but that is a treasure trove of recipes. Again, and now it's 6 spices. The whole, as you can see, the trend, I really am trying to get Indian food demystified and into kitchens, and have people cook with, and because not only is Indian food delicious, it is very, very, it's helpful. It can be super, it's based on Ayurveda, which is an ancient system of medicine, really. And if you know how to cook simple and simply, you will also gain the benefits. So this book, I happened to, when I was asked to write, like, okay, write another simpler book, I thought, okay, so things have moved so much in the last 14 years, 16 years, and there are so many more ingredients available, which I couldn't use in my first book. From oils, you go to the oil section now, and it's from peanut to coconut. You've got them all. You've got ghee. You've got several, like, even here in Wisconsin, we have several brands of ghee. So ingredients have become much more available. People are more familiar with different kinds of grains. So I was like, okay, we can push this a little bit. And this book but I still wanted to keep it accessible. So we're not throwing several spices in. I wanted to keep it within certain parameters of spices. And really the 6 spice I've chosen fits in very well with these 5, the original 5. So the book, even though I'm using the original 5 spices, does not a single recipe is repeated. It's all completely new.
Wow, that's quite a challenge you set up for yourself. Well, I think you do an amazing job really delivering on the premise of your book. Like if someone were to just pick it up, the title, 6 spices, 60 dishes, Indian recipes that are simple, fresh, big on taste. So just to focus on those 3 elements right now, like curious what each of those means to you. Like, what does it mean to be simple? What does it mean to be fresh? What does it mean to be big on taste?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is how I cook at home. I have one of the reasons I left California to go back to India was because my kids were little and I wanted to have it all. So I wanted to have time with my children. I wanted to be close to our parents so that the kids would know their grandparents. Yet I did not want to give up my professional life. So while I had restaurants or a very busy life, I still come home and I cook for my family. And how do I achieve it? So I achieve it through, simple recipes that are quick to put together. So what does simple mean? Simple means, literally, I challenge people to take this home and any of the recipes I feel, and if not, you're welcome to, find me, track me down and tell me, because I would love some feedback. But the techniques The ingredients, they are simple to acquire, very simple to put together. They don't take a lot of time. The book also uses one of my favorite tools, which is an Instant Pot, which really, I mean, they're actual like recipes where you throw things in the pot and they will cook, you know, and you really don't have to fuss too much. So no fuss, that means simple. Fresh is big for me. I mean, in California, no question, you know, everything was super fresh and organic and easily available. Goa, same thing. I grew my own stuff. In Wisconsin, it's a little bit more of a struggle to find. I mean, the weather is challenging, but I've actually grown to like canned food because certain canned vegetables are better when they're canned in, you know, in their prime time. But as far as possible, again, I sort of fall back on Ayurveda, which teaches you to use ingredients that are fresh because they have their life force still within them. So, and things that my mother taught me, which is you don't chop your vegetables ahead of time. You try and chop your vegetables just in time before you cook. So as much, I mean, let's face it, today it's a very challenging environment to try and do everything, but try and keep it minimally cooked, get fresh ingredients, and your end product should still taste fresh to you. So that's fresh for me. And then big in taste, you know, there are recipes in here that are not, you don't use, I think, probably no spice. Some of them have no spices at all. Some have just a single spice. So taste can come from just the vegetable itself or the ingredients that you put together. Like for instance, the cauliflower raita, I think has no spices at all, but it does have a little bit of coconut. So you should be able to coax flavor out of your ingredients without too much fuss. And that is what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to report after cooking out of it for the last week and a half that you deliver on all of those things. I get it. Yeah, I get a vegetable CSA every week. So like I'm constantly working through fresh vegetables. I was able to use my collard greens, my fennel. I'm not sure what else, but I was able to use lots of fresh vegetables, tap into my overflowing pantry of spices, and everything was really simple. I made one recipe for breakfast before work. I made several recipes for lunch during the day. So like, that's just to tell you all, like they are truly quick and simple and things that you can just pick up and make quickly and then feel super satisfied because of the flavor. So
I'm so glad. Thank you.
You're welcome. I also wanted to ask you, before we get into the spices, a little bit about the organization. The chapters of your book aren't the typical like breakfast, lunch, dinner, appetizers. Instead, you have like a chapter on health-giving soups, on dals and beans, uncommon mains, etc. Can you kind of tell us about like how you chose to organize your book in that way?
Yeah, you know, it really was a challenge because Indian food is not, you don't eat it in courses, or rather all the courses are presented together. So I understand why the cuisine is a little complex if you haven't grown up with it. Even now in my restaurant here, I make curry bowls, one category, and I present various sides with it. And sometimes I will have people ask me, like, what do you want me to do? Am I going to mix all of these things in with it? You know, so because there's like a lot of fresh salady kind of and pickled vegetables that I serve. So yes, it was a challenge trying to organize the categories. For instance, honestly, soups in India, traditional cuisine, we have a lot of soupy things, but they're not had as a soup course. So, but like every cuisine evolves, it's evolving, and food habits evolve. In India now, soup is a thing, you know, like in restaurants and homes. And even growing up, my mother would serve her various kinds of soups that she has learned to make with our traditional Indian meal. So it was, and salads is yet another thing. And you'll see the salads that are here are almost like, it really depends on how you eat your salad. I'm happy to eat a bowl of any of those vegetables that I put in here, like a tricolor salad, or I am happy to eat it for breakfast. My husband thinks I'm crazy, but I will pull out an entire bowl of monk sprouts and eat it for breakfast. So it was a bit of a challenge. Eventually, I kind of tried to organize it in a way that would be easier to follow for normal, as a normal cookbook. But it also makes it easy if you want to just say, okay, like I said, if I'm going to have a salad for breakfast, you go straight there. You're a vegetarian, you go straight to the vegetables. And even under the grains, you can, with the nourishing grains, we have breakfast items, you have rice dishes for meals, like a main course. So I try to make sense of it. I hope it does.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's fun to explore the different categories. Let's go ahead and talk about the 6 spices, because obviously without the 6 spices, this book doesn't exist. So
right.
Let's talk about each of the 6. Maybe you can give us a little bit of a description, characteristics, and if there are any specific recipes or things that people could make or eat to really get to know these spices and their flavors. And by the way, actually, before you do that, I want to show some of the beautiful photos in this book. There's full page spreads on each of the 6 spices. This, I believe, is the Asafoetida. So here's one way to get to know them.
The photographer was incredible. I mean, just these photos are stunning. Yeah.
Every page is vibrant and makes my mouth water. So sorry to interrupt. Let's go ahead and get started with cayenne.
Cayenne. Okay, so cayenne, it's so funny, but cayenne is chilies. Chilies are such an integral part of Indian cooking, but I'm sure a lot of your viewers know, it's not native to India. It came to India with the Portuguese about 500 odd years ago. And boy, did we cling to it. we made it ours. And now there's various kinds of chilies that are grown in India, different cuisine, different parts of India grow different kinds of chilies. They're valued differently, they're used differently, and we export a whole bunch. So cayenne is considered strengthening to your lungs, because I guess it makes your heart beat faster. I don't know, but it's definitely used a little bit. It helps with digestion, no question. So kids in India will actually be encouraged to eating a little bit of a spicy food palate. They get their palate used to it. Because I grew up, my parents mollycoddled me a little bit, and they would, because I couldn't stand it at all. So I had separate food made for me, or rather the food was made and then a little bit taken out, and then the rest would be spiced up for them. But you're expected to start liking it. It's an incredible spice. I say cayenne, there are various powdered chilies, ground chilies available. If you go to the Indian store, you're welcome to try a different kind. But cayenne would be the most, a common, popular, easily available spice. So cayenne so most of the time I'm going to ask people to buy whole spices, whatever spice they use in their kitchens, cloves, cardamom, cinnamon, whatever. But 2, maybe 3 of these spices I will allow you guys to buy pre-ground, cayenne being one of them, because you're not going to enjoy grinding the chilies, fresh. So the recipe I picked to kind of to showcase cayenne was the I don't know if you can see it, but the
Ooh.
spicy red pickled chicken.
I was so intrigued by that one because it's kind of a different way of eating than I'm personally used to. I'd love to hear a little more about that one.
Yeah, so it is actually, so a pickle in India is a little bit different from how it's under, well, a little bit, not too much. Yes, it is preserved or cured. It is a little tangy, and but very often, because it's Indian, there's a lot of spices. And we also pickle meats, fish. Different parts of India will pickle not just fruit, like mangoes and, different kinds of very local fruit, but vegetables and meats and fish. And the idea is that we have a huge monsoon season during which time really nothing much grows. You can go out onto the seas to fish. It's a time to allow all manner of livestock to, procreate and whatnot. You leave them alone. So these pickles are made ahead of time, and then they add interest to your otherwise sort of, it's like the winters here, right? So it's basically a very, very spicy and very concentrated flavor. And so you don't need a lot. So if you have a big bowl of rice and dal or a bowl of kanji, or so you need just very little to kind of spice up the meal. So that's also the other thing about pickles. They're used to kind of get the juices flowing, your gastric juices, and it's a little hit of flavor and
like a little condiment.
Yeah, condiment. Yeah, exactly.
You know,
right,
we did just get a question from the audience about, Tracy asks, if cayenne's different from Kashmiri chili?
Oh, yes, very. So Kashmiri chili is, grows in Kashmir. They're larger, they're much larger in size, and they're deeper red. So they're prized, and they're expensive, and they're prized for the color, because they give you a lot of color without the heat. So it's a great substitute if you don't want, especially in a dish like that, in the spicy red pickled chicken. Perfect if you want to use a majority of Kashmiri chili powder and then some cayenne, so you got the heat and the color without, too much heat.
Excellent. Yeah, so it sounds like it's something you can really play around with based on your personal taste, which chili you grab from the cabinet. All right, let's go to coriander next.
Coriander. Yeah, here we go. I can see. I just got reading glasses, and it's been, I keep forgetting to find, I never find them. Today I found them.
It is a treat to see too, yeah.
All right, so I chose, coriander. Coriander, usually in a live class, I would be like, who knows what coriander is? So coriander, as I'm sure all of us know, it's the seed of the cilantro herb, and the flavor is nothing like cilantro. So lots of people who find cilantro soapy, it's not like that at all. It's very lemony. In fact, good coriander should smell really, really lemony. And I love it. It's just such a versatile spice. I actually use it in my cookies and, all kinds of things here in my cafe here. But coriander is also, considered medicinal with coughs. So we make teas, like just, you boil it in water with a few other spices or just coriander, and you can sip it if you have a cough. We use it either whole, either ground whole, or you can toast it. So this is one of those spices which changes when you toast it. And dry toasting, you can, with a little bit of fat, you can toast it, but mostly there are two reasons to toast. So in India, you would toast a spice because the weather is a little damp. So spices become a little harder to grind. So you would either sun toast them or in a low oven or in a skillet. But my recipes here are asking, if I've asked you to toast them, you'll be doing it on a skillet, right? Just very simply. I've chosen to showcase that. I've chosen a unique recipe. It's called green onion omelet with a curry sauce. So this is, it's kind of, it's a great story. When we lived in Goa, one of the, like the food trucks, what the food trucks serve is what's called Rus omelet. So Rus just means gravy, and an omelet. So basically, early in the morning, like late, we'd go out to like shows sometimes, and you come back pretty late at night, and the only thing that's available, and it's so delicious at that time, these guys frying up eggs, and you could smell them. And they serve it. So it's traditionally supposed to be like a breakfast of omelet and last night's curry, which is spooned over. Oh my God, it's so good. But so no one waits for last night's curry. We just make it fresh. And to me, when you ask me to think of recipes that showcase a spice, I think of this particular curry sauce. Coriander is one of those that comes to mind. And it definitely, I think it uses, a whole teaspoon of ground coriander.
Okay.
So yeah, so I think this is a nice, and you can just see it, right? The green onion and the greenish sauce, greenish brown sauce.
I just love the visual of like going to a show and then being hungry after, because I know you've spent some time in the Bay Area. I lived in San Francisco for many years, and you'd do the same thing in San Francisco, but you'd walk out of the venue and there would be a cart with bacon wrapped hot dogs. So I'm sure anyone from the Bay Area is very familiar with that smell late at night.
Right.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yes.
Well, so I think naturally the next spice we should talk about is cumin, because coriander and cumin are like the power duo. I feel like so often paired in cuisines throughout the world, and they both are great whole and ground. So why don't you tell us about cumin?
Absolutely. So cumin is belongs to the parsley family, and this is prized as a digestive hugely. This is one of the, if you're Indian, you grow up chewing whole spices. So I made sure that my girls, even when they're little, and cumin can be kind of peppery and, strong, but if they grumble of a tummy ache or something, they got half a teaspoon of cumin to chew on. You guys don't have to do that. You can also make a tea. It's called a cumin tea. You literally just, take like say 4 cups of water, a teaspoon of cumin, set it to boil, let it boil for like 2 minutes. Cover, cool, and then 10 minutes later, you can just strain it and drink it all day long. For digestive health, this is really, it's like a simple, amazing, So that's what and of course, the flavor, right? And cumin as well is either bloomed in hot oil to release the flavor, or you grind it, or you toast it and then grind it. Or, I chose this recipe so we're using it whole and raw to add to a batter. So I've chosen the spiced oat pancakes. And what you do to release the flavor is you want to put the cumin in the palm of your hand, and you're going to crush it just by rubbing it together. And it's
the original spice grinder.
Yeah. Bruiser, the original bruiser. So you want to, just kind of do that, and then it releases the flavor not only into the air and into your nostrils, but also inside something like a batter, which, how else are you going to get unless you grind it? But I want to be able to chew on, like actually feel the texture of it when I make the pancakes. So, and this is interesting. I mean, I demoed it actually in my book launch here. Savory pancakes, right? It's sometimes you have to kind of think about it differently, but Indians mostly have savory breakfasts, and this is an amazing. And therefore my family enjoys savory pancakes for breakfast. And there is something that you make the batter, you can keep it in the fridge for a couple of days. And just so simple. You just, as we know, how simple pancakes can be. So that's kind of why I used this recipe.
Yeah. I love that. It seems like for most of the spices, there's like all of them have an element of great flavor, but then there's also like a texture component or a color component. So they each kind of bring a couple different things to the table, and then you can play with those in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
In that particular recipe, if I remember right, I think you offer a suggestion for if you want to change out the flours and make it gluten-free, if I recall. And just for the people listening who are thinking about picking up this book, there is some really nice tags in the book and suggestions for those that might be eating gluten-free or vegetarian. Those are all noted in the book.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, the part of India I grew up in, we had really, it's culinarily a very blessed area, because I mean, I grew up, my family was supposedly, you know, we come from a community that's supposed to be vegetarian, but you do not miss the meat. We had all manner of grains, all kinds of vegetables. So it wasn't just sort of mono eating where it's only wheat or only rice. We had all kinds of grains that we used as flour or as whole grains. And I've tried to introduce a few of those recipes in the book. There is I think millet recipe. There's not sure, can't remember now, but there are various kinds of flour that you can use. Oh yeah, sorghum, there's whole sorghum, there's, you know, and I know, and if you can't find it, you can use quinoa. But it's so easy to be vegan or gluten-free if you have access to great recipes, I think, you know, because otherwise it can get quite limiting. And I've tried very hard to kind of call those out so that yeah, it's I mean, I'm a vegetarian at heart, really. So most of these recipes, I mean, even with the meat recipes, I've tried to shove in, you know, vegetables. So
I mean, the vast majority are vegetarian. So for anyone who's a vegetarian cook, this would be a great cook for them. Or people that eat meat and want to eat more vegetarian meals in their everyday life as well.
Right. Yeah.
All right, so we made it through 3. We have 3 more spices. Let's talk mustard seeds.
Mustard's kind of fun. So, you know, one of the questions I always get is what kind of mustard seeds to buy. So I prefer, so we have all 3 in India, the yellow, the brown, that's pretty fine, and the large sort of Japanese, the black ones. I prefer the black ones, even though they're bigger and therefore can be bitter if you chomp on it and it hasn't been cooked correctly. But use whatever you like. You know, any of those 3 are fine. There are various ways that we use mustard in this book or in India, but primarily you cook them in hot fat to pop them. So when you pop them open, it's almost like popcorn. It releases the flavor. It's not as bitter, and it's texture-wise, it's more pleasing as well. And another way to do it is actually grind it to use it in a curry or in a sauce. And I've chosen the mustard shrimp. So no photo here, but we have a recipe for mustard shrimp. This is based on a recipe from Bengal, which literally the sauce is based on mustard. So it is a little wasabi hit, you know, but you grind the mustard seeds with chilies and ginger and garlic, and you make a little sauce, and you just float a piece of fish or shrimp in it. And it will change your idea of Indian food as well, because it's not that typical, curry that you think of. Yeah, so that's my mustard.
Great. Yeah, one more to add to the list. I'm gonna have to be cooking my way all the way through by the end of this. All right, turmeric. I think as those of us living in the US who are connected to the internet have heard a lot about turmeric in the last several years, decade. And I'm sure many people were familiar with it well before then, but it's become very popular here for many reasons. So tell us a little bit about turmeric and how you use it.
Turmeric. I mean, as you said, in fact, it's being studied now to see, because there's a connection between turmeric and a very low rate of Alzheimer's in India. So it's considered an anti-inflammatory, antibiotic. It's antioxidant. It is a very powerful, simple thing, but so powerful, and cannot imagine Indian food or Indian life without it. It belongs to the ginger family, and cooks in India, like growing up with my mother, not growing up, when we were in Goa this time, my mother-in-law's garden, and then subsequently my farm, we grew turmeric. And if you have it like that, you can use it raw, pull it out of the garden and, you can grind it up, or I'm so sorry, not raw. You use whole turmeric. Raw turmeric actually the flavor is different. The color is not as saturated. So different things are done with raw turmeric. Raw turmeric we use to make, or fresh, not raw, fresh turmeric is the word. We actually pickle them, almost like the, pickled ginger in sushi.
I want to try that.
Served with sushi, yeah, it's delicious. Simple brine, and it's considered an aperitif. You have it just before you start a meal. You have it as a pickle with your food. And then they're dried, and those whole are still used by some cooks who have access to it, or access to a mortar and pestle and, and time to be able to grind all that. So this is the other spice that I would say is okay to buy ground, because it also holds its potency a little longer. It is a wonder spice. And in fact, as women in India, you grow up using it even in beauty regimen. So I used to teach this in my classes in Oakland, and so it's kind of funny. It's okay with my skin, but I had this Irish girl come back 3 classes later, and she's like, I couldn't leave the house for 2 whole days.
Oh boy. Yeah, maybe this is like one of those instances of do a little test on different part of your body.
So you have to put the powdered turmeric with chickpea flour, and and make sure you don't put too much of it. But it is an antioxidant and a cleanser for your, antiseptic for your body as well. The recipe I decided to showcase was the silken eggplant, and that's because usually you will have recipes with turmeric tell you to either add it to hot oil or add it to a masala blend or cook it. But personally, I like the flavor of raw turmeric, uncooked turmeric. It has a very earthy, very, very sort of pungent flavor. And I sprinkle it uncooked on the eggplant in this dish. And it's always that one little thing where people, my guests are always like, this tastes so different. What is it? That's it. So
okay.
I think it's quite enjoyable for, cooks to find a recipe that is a little, unique that way. So
absolutely. Yeah, I feel the same about turmeric. It's like I used it in a lot of things, but like somehow never really felt like I knew what it tasted like. And then I found one recipe. I'm like, oh, this is turmeric, and it's so delightful. And actually, it's a cake recipe from Dessert Person. It's like a squash and turmeric tea cake, and it's just
wow.
There's also coriander, cardamom. There's also cardamom in there. It's
okay,
delicious.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right. Well, it's cool to hear about how these are not only delicious, but also good for your health, and apparently good for your skin too. So we're at our number 6, and this is the one that was added since your last book.
Yes.
Asafoetida. So first, maybe just pronounce it the correct way, because I'm not sure if I'm doing it, just so people know.
Oh gosh,
I wish we had, a live audience here so we could do the show of hands, because I am curious, how many people are familiar with it, using it, but we'd all love to learn more.
Yeah. So I say Asafoetida just like you do, but I think it's also pronounced Asafoetida, like repeated. Hing is one of the word Hindi word for it, so it's easier to say. So go ahead and use that. So as the name suggests, it is stinky. It's faded. It's not a very, and that is why I waited a long time to add that on, because it just was not easily available or known or understood. It is still something that can take people aback. You don't want to, so I have that little container with the spices, but I will not empty the Asafoetida into it. I keep the little jar of that spice separate, because it will odorize everything. But it is a magic spice. It is the main purpose of it, I think, is there's no polite way to say this, but it just eliminates gas. So it takes care of gas in your ingredients or in your body. I remember I've been pregnant twice and became super giant, and once there's no room left in there, and there you have gastric issues. And I would literally take a little, I used to buy whole Asafoetida at the time, and I would break off a little chunk. It's a resin, by the way. So it's basically a resin it's the root of a plant that grows in the northern parts of India, Afghanistan, the Himalayas. And I would swallow this little piece, and in 10 minutes, pure relief. So it's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
No one should have a stomachache after this discussion. We've got our cumin tea and
yeah,
our hing to the rescue.
True. And the other reason it's used or it's prized is because once you bloom it in or cook it in hot oil, the flavor is of and aroma as well is of garlic, mostly garlic, frying, and onion a little bit. So there are communities in India that don't use either in their food for spiritual and religious purposes. And this is an incredible flavor enhancer for them. So it's like a hit of umami without having to use, onion or garlic. And I chose the devil's dung potatoes. It's called, the hing is also called devil's dung. Very, very unfortunate name, but I love it. I think it's very funny. And so these are called hing aloo or hing potatoes, and it's one of my favorite recipes growing up from northern part of India, where they barely, it has cumin seeds, turmeric, and Asafoetida. That's so it. Simple. Yeah, and it makes for a very, and we use quite a bit in all of our other recipes. Generally, the Asafoetida is very little, but here you're using half a teaspoon. That's quite a lot of that spice, but you want to make sure you cook it properly in the oil before you add your potatoes. But this will tell you what a great job it does in flavoring, a dish.
Yeah. Every description I've ever read is about how it's so pungent and to some people off-putting, but I've never really quite found that. It just, as long as you like onions and garlic, it's quite the pleasant smell. And then when you're cooking with it, like, it smells familiar. It smells like really good Indian food out of your own kitchen. How fabulous.
Right. Yeah, I think it's the uncooked variety that puts people off, because it's like, but I think cooks now have become so much more exposed to strange ingredients and different ways of just the world is smaller now. So yeah, you're right. It doesn't need to have
it's not so exotic. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you touched on it a little bit, but maybe just recap your general recommendations as far as like buying and storing spices. Like, are we buying spices from bulk bins? Should we be buying small quantities? Should we be buying online? Like, do you have any recommendations on how people should kind of get their pantry started to cook in this book?
I would say, unless you're, doing a lot of cooking every day, you want to buy them in small quantities. Your cumin, mustard, and coriander, please buy them whole and as fresh as possible. So find a good purveyor of fresh spices. Same with the turmeric. Turmeric can look different, like the hue can change from, the crop or wherever it's come from. So just as long as you have a spice purveyor whom you trust. Chili powder, if you go to the Indian store, there will be many varieties, and you want to, like heat level it will change wildly. So you want to be a little careful of that. Hing or Asafoetida is available, even the same brand I have seen on Amazon as well. So it's possible, but small quantities, use them quickly, and get fresh. And please don't buy ground cumin or coriander. It loses its potency. It's just like sawdust after a while,
Yeah.
So
one of the keys there is grind your own. Get one, a dedicated spice grinder. I mean, I think they cost like $15 maybe. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then you have super fresh spices every time.
Yeah.
So before I go to the next question, I just want to remind people, if you have any questions for Ruta, put them in the Q&A about Indian cooking, about spices, about her life as a restaurant owner. Feel free to put those in there, and we'll ask them before we wrap up tonight. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is, it's like a theme throughout your book, is this idea of unmistakably Indian. And I'm just curious a little bit about like what that means to you. Like, is it about ingredients, techniques? Is it the recipes? So like maybe you can just tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So with all my books, my purpose and my goal was to demystify Indian cooking. With this one, the added sort of purpose and goal is that people introduce these recipes into their daily lives, because it's not exotic, and it doesn't have to be. And get this into your, like, don't save it for special, you can, of course, but it'd be nice if you just added one of these recipes to your daily meal, right? And there's actually suggestions, serving tips all across almost all of the recipes that show you how you can do it. What you can, you have a piece of fish, but you can use one of my salad recipes alongside. So I think but it is unmistakably Indian, because there are so many ingredients, not just spices, that make, or remind me at least. It might just be a little bit different for you, because if you've never cooked with dried coconut in a salad before, or in a curry before. But to me, all of them have a little definite memory of it being Indian, whether it's the oil we use, or it's a different millet or something. So, and I think readers and cooks will also recognize that it's a little bit, it's just a little different from and what is that? And I hope that it rings Indian, to people. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I thank you for introducing me to fresh curry leaves. I've always read, don't even bother with the dried, only use fresh, but for the longest time I could never find fresh. So I still have like a bag of dried curry leaves. But I did find some fresh curry leaves when I was in the Bay Area last week. Nice. So I made your halibut, curry leaf halibut, which couldn't be more simple. You just blitz up a couple of ingredients, marinate it either overnight or, as little as 30 minutes. But I feel like that's a really good example of using like unmistakably Indian ingredients, but then just like, eating your meal in such a simple way that you're used to. Like I eat fish all the time. I can't remember what I served it with, but I know your recommendation is like potatoes and basically salad greens. So
Yeah,
it's just a
yeah.
great entry point for kind of, discovering some new Indian ingredients. So definitely the spices are kind of the focus, but there's a handful of other Indian ingredients that you introduce us to throughout the book.
Great.
I think we're going to run out of time here. Let me ask you like one more question. And again, if anyone has questions, feel free to put them in. There's there's a whole chapter on dal and beans, and it says right in there, like, this is Indian. This is unmistakable. This is quintessentially Indian, I think is what you say.
Right.
Can you tell us about dal chawal? Like, what is it? You have a couple of recipes in here. Is it one thing? Is it many things? Maybe kind of tell us a little bit about that.
So dal chawal, I mean, it's like the rice and beans, of Mexican food, maybe. It is the basic, the staple, and if you have nothing else, that'll do, because you've got your protein, you've got your carbs, sets you up for your day. What is dal? Dal it can mean the legume itself. It can mean the cooked product. It can mean the tempered and flavored, So it's a little bit of a, ubiquitous little term. And there's so many kinds, so the whole bean. So we have many, many kinds of beans, whole beans, but then when they're split into two, that's a kind of dal. So the mung bean, for instance, as a whole bean, it can be cooked like a dal, or it can be sprouted and used as a salad or as a curry, or you split it. If you split it into two, it's green mung dal, then you can split it and skin it, and it's yellow mung dal. So this is another talk.
I think I need a chart. Yeah.
Yeah, so with dals, I think that is why I've used split peas, I've used, whole beans. All of these are very, I don't like to use the word authentic, but, authentically presented in an Indian way. But yeah, you want to go to the Indian store and be bedazzled by the number of dals, then it can be a fun experience.
Well, the good news for anyone picking up the book is don't feel intimidated by dal, because the recipes are not intimidating at all. So just jump in there and start cooking.
Awesome.
I have one last question I wanted to jump in and ask. I was recently, took like a food sensitivity test and was told I should stay away from coriander, which is very sad news for me as a big fan of Indian food. I was just wondering if you have any advice for me.
Oh, absolutely. Just stay away from it. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. I mean, you're a cook. It's easy to find. And you can just text me if there's any recipe in here that you think you want to make, and looking for a substitute. Each recipe might be a little different, but because it won't be one size fits all. Right. But yeah, I can help you with it. I mean, sometimes even lemon zest, or I
was wondering that, if that might be a good option. That's so nice. Sure. Thank you so much. I'm a big fan of Indian food, and I'm such a big fan of you and your work as well. Congratulations. It's such a beautiful book. I think that a lot of times, just being at the bookstore and kind of talking to people about different cuisines they might want to try, I think a lot of people are intimidated by like thinking they need a lot of ingredients to get started in Indian food. So I love your approach. I think it's super accessible and super fun. So congratulations, and thank you so much for being here with us. Yeah, and Monique, thank you for a fantastic conversation as always.
Of course. Thank you so much for inviting me. And Ruta, wonderful getting to know you through this talk and before.
You too.
And I hope we get to cross paths once again.
Oh, for sure. Stay in touch. I just love chatting with you. That was great. Thank you so much, Zoe, too. This was such, when I'm in Seattle, I'll look you up for sure.
Definitely come by. And of course, thank you everyone for joining us this evening as well. Hope you all have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you soon.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.